Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Convention with the Weekly Comic Book Roundup. We'll get started on part 2 of this week's roundup with Captain Marvel number 14. Where we left off, excuse me, Captain Marvel, who is being manipulated by the villain Vox Supreme, revealed that she hasn't actually killed Iron Man or Thor. She stored them in a pocket dimension and is now telling them what's going on. So, as you might guess, neither Thor or Tony Stark is happy with the situation. And she basically explained that the situation, the solution she's enacting, hiding the Avengers in this pocket dimension and delivering severed heads of their clones to Vox Supreme, is the best she could come up with on the fly. And she basically says, "Hey, I gotta go finish. I've been in this singularity long enough. If I don't leave, he's gonna realize something's up. While I'm gone, think of a better plan." And so she brings the body of Tony Stark to Vox Supreme, who informs her that it's taking her too long. And seeing as how she's only brought him so far 2 Avengers, she's got just over 12 hours to bring her 4 more, to bring Vox 4 more. And he threatens to detonate another one of the bombs he has, which there are, from what you can tell, maybe 9 altogether. And she goes back to her mission. As she leaves, however, it appears Vox Supreme is 2 entities, as he has a conversation with seemingly himself. We also see that the severed head of Thor is hooked up to various cords and components. And it appears that Stark's body is about to be autopsied. We catch back up with Carol Danvers outside of Palo Alto, California. She's going after Black Panther, who set a trap for her in Palo Alto. But the energy weapon he's using is actually kind of supercharging her up. So, yeah. And she basically says that the problem with Black Panther is largely the armor. But she does manage to utilize the nearby power cables to knock out T'Challa. However, before she can take T'Challa, She-Hulk shows up, declaring it Hulk Smashy time. And that's where the issue ends. Next up, we've got Web of Venom, The Good Son. So, where we left off with Dylan Brock. Dylan is staying with Harry Osborn, Liz Allen, and little Normie Osborn after the events of Absolute Carnage, and while his father, Eddie, is elsewhere. So we open up late the night that Eddie leaves. Normie wakes up in the middle of the night, sees the note from Eddie to Dylan, reads it, goes back to sleep. The next morning, Dylan has found the note, has read it. And it turns out that Eddie's unaware that Dylan is the one who basically took out the Carnage symbiote during Absolute Carnage. And so the two of them talk about things. It turns out that Harry has a little hidden closet full of goblin tech. Well, Dylan has his own secret. The last remnants of the Carnage symbiote. And apparently he can control it. So the two decide to try to go out into the city and work on controlling that sliver of carnage. In presumably Central Park, they basically send the piece of carnage to take over a raccoon, and carnagized raccoon goes a little nuts in the convenience store they go to, but it seems maybe Dylan's got some issues. And maybe Dylan does too. And so that night, after Harry and Liz go out in the town, and I think Mark is Molten Man, formerly Molten Man. He's but anyway, it turns out that Dylan's writing his journal. And later on, Normie wakes up, and Dylan's talking to himself. And he draws a little spiral on the wall. And Normie wakes up, reads part of the journal, and they get into a fight. Which leads to them ending up out the window. However, Sleeper catches them. And Sleeper kind of sort of takes Dylan's side rather than Normie's. So they go back. So in bed, it seems It seems the reason for Dylan's shift in behavior is Null is steadily working on him in his mind. In fact, in Dylan's journal, it shows that he's dreaming of Null. There's a backup story with Sleeper. Which has him as a bounty hunter, basically bringing the comes in to collect a bounty and The king he's doing the hunting for wants to see his face, and, well, he reveals that he's got a symbiote carrying around the skeleton of the putrefied body of a Kree soldier. Then continues to travel through. He escapes, makes his way through space, and is eventually called back to Clintar by Null. And that's where it's a whole flashback story for him. Anyways, that's it for Web of Venom The Good Son. Moving on to Runes of Ravencroft Dracula. So where we left off, in the early days of Ravencroft Institute's founding, Dr. Nathaniel Essex, who would later become known as Mr. Sinister, worked there, as did Victor Creed, later to be known as Sabretooth, as an orderly. And they kidnapped admittedly, at that point, adult James Howlett, and were experimenting upon him. However, one of the other doctors, Dr. Claudia Russell, discovered this, freed James Howlett, better known as Logan, or Wolverine, fought Sabretooth, but was incapacitated with a tranquilizer, and later on dissected by Sinister. In the present, there was a cell within, labeled Unwanted, that was filled with creatures. And something that Mayor Wilson Fisk recognizes. So we begin with Miss Fantastic leading a group of heroes into the chamber where the Unwanted were kept in. Misty Knight, Man-Wolf, as well as new arrivals Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and Falcon. They arrive, however, find the room empty. But they're not the only new arrival, as the Winter Soldier's there, and he knows full well about the Unwanteds, as well as more of the history. Explaining he knows because he was there. And so we see more things that happened in 1918. The appearance of the so-called Master of the World, a man who claimed to be a 40,000-year-old caveman, but that Dr. Ravencroft concluded was actually closer to 40. In 1923, a young Al Capone broke out of Ravencroft with the help of a man named Silas Burr, who would later go on to become the Wolverine villain Cyber. In 1932, there was a skinwalker that arrived, though Ravencroft still doesn't know exactly what he was supposed to be, even to the day he was writing about this. And then came the time that Loki showed up and promptly escaped. Dr. Essex would eventually leave and make his way to Germany, though Ravencroft could care less where he went as long as he was gone. In 1945, however, Professor Thornton, who would later go on to work with Weapon X, as well as Baron Blood and Count Dracula, would work to cure vampires of their weaknesses, namely their photosensitivity. However, Captain America has arrived alongside Bucky. The two of the Cap fights Dracula while Bucky makes it in. Their mission is to find an old friend of Cap's who was injured in the war and, well, got was checked into Ravencroft to deal with his issues and never heard and hadn't been heard from since. So Bucky makes his way through and he finds Cap's old friend, or well, what's left of him. Cap defeats Dracula, but he does get an assist from Ravencroft, who unleashes the unwanted. Enabling for Cap and Bucky to escape, while Dracula, Baron Blood also escape, as does Thornton. And Ravencroft kills himself. And so, it's weeks later now, and Ravencroft is rebuilt, being reopened with various supervillains being brought in, including Mr. Hyde, Doppelganger. I think the Wrecker is among those being brought in early on. Though Misty doesn't think it's a good idea for everyone to be brought in all at once. However, the special consultant disagrees. That special consultant being none other than Norman Osborn. And that is where the issue ends. Alright, next up we've got Conan Serpent War #4. So where we left off, Conan had been injured by a priestess of Set. And both he and Moon Knight are apparently in an unearthly realm where Khonshu and Set are apparently locked in battle. So we begin with James Allison continuing, explaining what all had happened. How he killed, as Njord, he slew Sato the Great Serpent. He took some of Sato's venom, put it on an arrow, and then he found his true enemy, though, the Worm. He thought he'd killed it and died a hero, but he was wrong. The Worm managed to find a way to, throughout history, the Worm had a tool with which to expand its reach beyond its previous boundaries. Spiritual connection now controlled by, which was now controlled by the disease he had been afflicted with. And so in Eternal Egypt, a place beyond time, Khonshu defeats Set. And it tells Mark to go to Stygia as his avatar of the physical plane, to face the nightmare head on, while Khonshu attempts to unravel the spirit. And if they fail, reality falls. And so Conan wakes up back in the Hyborian Age with Dark Agnes. The priestess sucks out the venom from his wound. And an uneasy alliance is formed. In Turin, Italy, in 1584, Mark just barely stops Solomon Kane from shooting him in the head. And the two are then sent to the Hyborian Age. Where they must team up with Conan, Dark Agnes, and the Priestess to take on the Worm as it arrives. And so we actually get a pretty cool battle sequence, but what's really neat is what's written about it. 5 souls between us and the end of all things, a story for the ages. There is beauty in the rhythm of words, the sounds we make to codify our lives, abstract concepts made manifest. Yet, at this moment, I struggle to find the words to fashion this immortality. Words can hardly convey this battle waged blade and blood, faith and fervor, the struggle in the desert set among the stars, the battle of mortals to decide the fate of gods, every blade forged in fire, every warrior burning bright. The worm trapped between life and death, reality and spirit, all powerful and most vulnerable, all at once across all time, faces the power of gods and the strength of steel. And so, it's Moon Knight who's then told by Khonshu to take a piece of the moon that is, and every moon that shall ever be, to use that piece and to strike the worm, which he does. And then everyone is sent back to their respective times. Well, Conan is not, but the priestess is dying. In Charon, France, Dark Agnes returns. Her partner is being cared for while she was missing. Back in Durham, England, Solomon Kane is put on the course of animals walking like men. Beyond time, it's revealed that while Khonshu did defeat Set, Khonshu did not destroy Set. As without the influence of Set anchored to this plane, the worm could stake its claim if it hasn't done so already. And seems Mark has developed an additional power. A sliver of Khonshu's light swimming inside of him. And seeing ghostly images as he sees ghostly images everywhere. And Mark jumps out into the night, asking if this is the world Khonshu sees, that this is the world that needs him. In Valusia, the Thurian Age, an odd crown is brought to King Kull, the slayer of Borna, conqueror of the Serpent Men, the king of Valusia. The crown is brought to him by Jamis of Lemuria. With Jamis promising that Valusia and the worm shall build an age undreamt of. And that is where the issue ends. As well as the series, for that matter. Alright, that's it for this week's roundup. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.